Joining me, Jack Burkman, Republican strategist and host of Behind the Curtain with Jack Burkman. Catch him every Saturday night on the Radio America Network and Sunday afternoons at 2 on WMAL in Metro D.C. Also, John Neffinger, Democratic strategist and co-author of Compelling People. With strong words this week from Republican frontrunner Donald Trump as the controversy continues to grow over allowing Syrian refugees into the U.S.
Refugees are pouring into our great country from Syria. We don't even know who they are. They could be ISIS. They could be anybody. What's our president doing? Is he insane?
Other candidates like Senator Ted Cruz suggested that only proven Christians should be allowed in the U.S. Jack, is this the right tone for your party?
Yes, I think it's a winning issue, Morris, in 2016. Substance aside, I think it's a very winning issue. Trump has politically very skillfully made it his issue. He beat Cruz to the punch. Both of them beat Rubio to the punch, who was kind of the foreign policy leader to this point. Trump is wise to go all the way right, to just say, let's keep everybody out. They're arguing on the House, should we have a security test, a religious test? Trump says, let's have no test. Let's just exclude them all. I agree with that. You know, when we took the Irish, the Italians, all the people at the turn, my people at the turn of the 20th century, they all came here to work in mills. There was a reason we brought these people in. There's no reason to bring these people in. A good number of them could end up being terrorists. Obama even wants to give them $1,000 each. I think Trump's right on the money.
John, as the Democrat, are you just sitting back kind of watching all this take place, laughing to yourself?
Well, I'm not laughing because I think Jack's right that there's reason to think this is good politics. If you look at the closing arguments in the 2014 campaign, you saw Republicans across the country making the argument that we should all be very afraid because ISIS was going to be bringing Ebola, remember Ebola, over the southern border. The campaign of fear has worked very well for the Republicans in the past, and so it's not surprising that they go to that again.
John, how do we benefit from bringing these people in? What tangible benefits accrue to the United States?
The same benefit that any refugees would, Jack. This is one of the things that our government does very well, like Social Security. If you look, we brought hundreds of thousands of refugees in since 9/11, and not one of them has ever been involved in any issue of domestic terrorism. This taking our fear about what happened in Paris out on the Syrian refugees is kind of like invading Iraq after 9/11. They have nothing to do with one another. Zero.
All of these people, or 99.9% of these people, have absolutely no money. They need to be housed, fed, taken care of, given cash when they hit the American shores.
Like
Why in the world should my tax dollars go for that?
Like so many of our forefathers. You know, it's the Christmas season. You may remember that story, right? About people from the Middle East who were wandering and needed to be taken in. And you know, that one actually turned out okay.
The Christmas
This could
story.
be a modern-day miracle, Jack.
That's the one.
Trump also suggested there should be a national directory of all Muslims in the United States. Critics have called it racist, comparing it to Nazi Germany. Jack, is your party alienating minorities and totally ruining Republican chances to take the White House next year?
Well, what Trump is doing, I mean, I don't think anybody's halfway serious about doing that, Morris. I think what Trump is doing is that's a symbolic statement, once again, to politically occupy the far right on that issue. He's positioning himself out, and I think Trump, I can't speak for Trump, but I do think he intended that as symbolism, but it has the political effect of cornering the market on the issue. It's brilliant politics. Now, as for the substance, I think America has to increasingly accept the reality, and none of us like to accept this reality, but Islam is an increasingly radical and radicalized ideology, and we have to deal with that.
John, again, as the Democrat in the room, all I see is the general public running from the Republicans right now.
Sure. And I think Jack's right that smart politics for Trump, it's a good move for him within the context of a Republican primary. But this is not about minorities. This is about American values. We don't do this. We don't create registries of people based on religion or based on race. That's just not who we are. If we want to have a country like that, we should start over from scratch and tear up the Constitution. But that's not what I think Americans want at the end of the day.
Well, get ready for more, because the Republican-led House also passed a bill that would halt the flow of Syrian refugees into the U.S. President Obama slammed it.
They're victims of this terrorism. And so if there are concrete, actual suggestions to enhance this extraordinary screening process that's already in place, we're welcome, we're open to hearing actual ideas, but that's not really what's been going on in this debate. When candidates say we wouldn't admit 3-year-old orphans, that's political posturing.
Despite Obama's words, a new poll shows 53% of Americans want to stop Syrian refugees from resettling in the U.S. John, should Obama listen to the masses? Should he think twice about vetoing this bill?
No, I think this is one case where if we have a conversation about this, we're going to come a little bit to our senses. Now, whether that's going to actually happen with Republicans stoking these fires, I don't know. But look, this is a gift to ISIS. They had nothing particularly personally against those however many hundred some odd people that they killed in Paris. What they wanted to do was to scare the West into overreacting. And this is exactly what this bill shows them. It's a total victory. They've scared us into overreacting.
I'll make you a prediction right here and now. I think both Paul Ryan and Mitch McConnell can get enough votes to override the veto on this. If you look what's happening in the Senate now, even Chuck Schumer of New York, who suddenly on all of these Islamic issues finds himself in terrible political trouble in New York. Democrats are breaking in half over this issue. You will soon be to a point where a majority of Senate Democrats support this kind of legislation. Obama will find himself isolated with a tiny minority out on the left-wing fringe. Even Hillary's calling for a harder presence, more troops in the Mideast this week. So Obama is
she's
isolated.
Not taking it out against the refugees. That's a different thing.
We'll get to Hillary in just a second because that's big news too. In the meantime, Republican presidential candidate Chris Christie is calling out Obama for creating the problem in the first place.
The president's the person who created this entire situation. He didn't keep his word when he drew a red line in Syria. He allowed the situation in Syria to happen. He hasn't set up a no-fly zone, which could create a safe haven for these refugees to live safely in their own country rather than having to scatter all across the world. And he's the one who's casting aspersions. It's a joke. And he's a joke on this issue.
Ouch. John, is Christie right? Did Obama have a chance to stop this?
No, he's rewriting history. I mean, the reason that Iraq fell apart, the reason that Syria fell apart, we know exactly how that happened, right? This was President Bush who invaded Iraq and ruined whatever stability there was in the region. We know that already. What did Obama do? Well, actually, if you look at what happened in Syria, he said that if they used chemical weapons, there would be consequences. And in fact, when they did, that we actually worked with Russia to get rid of some of their chemical weapons.
John,
listen, what, Jack? What's going on?
The issue here, American foreign policy in the Mideast is now so bad. And again, most Democrats in Congress agree with me. They're just afraid to say it. It's so bad in the Mideast that we have now let the Russians in the door to become kind of the white knight, the heroic knight that are now fighting side by side with the French. And the French and the Russians have taken the lead in fighting ISIS. And the Americans are being swept off the stage because we're so incredibly inept.
Swept off the stage? Is this a stage we really want to be in? I mean, look, Obama has said in so many words that his basic guiding principle is don't do stupid stuff. And you know what? That served us pretty well. If you look at Obama's tenure and what's happened, not great, but in terms of U.S. People, U.S. interests versus what happened in the Bush administration, we're way ahead of the game right now.
All right, back to what we were talking about earlier. Another presidential candidate is weighing in on the ISIS problem. During this week's Democratic matchup, Senator Bernie Sanders said climate change was one reason for the spread of terrorism. It's a sentiment often heard on the left. Jack, what do you think of Sanders' comments? You know, the deserts are too hot. We're creating all these monsters out there in the hot lands.
I kind of don't believe in global warming, so it might take me out. It might take me out of this. It's kind of a discussion about Santa Claus. It's about whether Santa Claus is causing terrorism. I don't know, Morris. Sometimes I think Bernie Sanders, who's really a very nice man, I know him well, I think he's kind of cracked up. I don't know that really, I might just chalk that up to senility. I couldn't follow the twisted and tortured logic between climate change and terrorism. I really don't know, Morris.
John, even as a Democrat, are you a little embarrassed about the climate change analogy?
Not especially. It's called listening to scientists. It's called listening to the Pentagon, whose analysts have looked at global warming as a major threat multiplier for years now. And what you saw in Syria, it's not like global warming started the whole thing, but what you saw was there were years of drought. Are you saying it caused
some events in Syria?
Did it cause events? Yeah, there were years of drought, which mean that everybody who used to live in the rural areas crowded into the cities because they couldn't grow crops anymore.
Are you serious?
That was tinder for the revolution there.
You're arguing then that the drought in Syria is what brought about ISIS in Syria?
Don't listen to me, listen to scientists, which apparently you're not inclined to do. But yeah, that's what they say.
All right, meanwhile, Democratic frontrunner Hillary Clinton is laying out her plan to defeat ISIS, including a call for ground troops.
We should be honest about the fact that to be successful, airstrikes will have to be combined with ground forces actually taking back more territory from ISIS.
This is a major departure from President Obama's plan of no boots on the ground. John, is Hillary right? Is it time for ground forces, but would Democrats support her on this?
Yeah, it's important to listen carefully to what she's saying. What she's saying is ground forces, yes, because unlike other terror groups, ISIS actually does take and hold territory. But she was also very careful to say a couple of things. Number one, that there should not be an American face on this primarily, that you need local ground forces taking responsibility for their own countries. What we can do is help them. Also, I mean, look, we have special forces operating all around the globe all the time already. So this is really about redeploying those assets and getting them to focus on that more than it is some kind of an escalation, which she said explicitly we do not want an escalation, a large-scale American presence on the ground.
Clearly she's right. I mean, everybody calling for more ground troops, I mean, that's the right thing to do. Now, what this signifies politically, Morris, is that she now thinks Bernie Sanders is no longer a threat. She's probably right. She is now beginning to think about the general election. She's not worried about her Democratic base. Her Democratic base doesn't want her to put any more ground troops in the Mideast, so it's telling politically.
All right, let's move on. The race for the White House has gotten a little less crowded, with Louisiana Governor Bobby Jindal dropping out.
I'm honored to have had the chance to run for President of the United States. My parents came here 45 years ago in search of freedom and opportunity. Never in a million years would they have imagined that I could be governor, much less run for president. This wasn't our time.
The move doesn't come as a surprise. Jindal was polling with less than 1%, but there are still 14 other Republicans. Jack, we're almost to the new year. Shouldn't your party be behind a solid candidate by now?
Yeah, I think it's time for a lot of these guys to get out. I see the race is coming.
Them.
Well, that's right. I think we'll tell them tonight. We'll tell them right here now.
Heard it here first.
I think we've come down to 4 people. I think you've got Trump, you've got Carson, you have Rubio, and you have Cruz. I think those are the 4 candidates who really go into the Iowa caucus.
No Jeb at all?
No Jeb at all. And I think, and Rick Santorum I'll throw in there because he'll be strong in Iowa. Iowa's always his terrain. I don't think anything after that. But Rick Santorum could win the Iowa caucus. Remember, you heard it here.
But Jeb can fix it. I thought Jeb was going to fix it.
Jeb
John?
can.
You think Jeb's out, John?
I think Jeb has failed to ignite any interest whatsoever. On the other hand, he has the financial wherewithal to hang in there for a while. And so what you see, this is the time of the cycle where you get these infatuations with interesting characters like Carson, or back up and remember Herman Cain a while ago. And what happens at the end? There's a shakeout and the institutional candidate is left handed. So I think it's a little early to count Jeb out.
To some degree, Morris, I would just quickly, Trump continues to hold a commanding lead over months and months and months that now approaches 40%. He's a lot stronger now than, say, where Reagan would have been at the same point in 1980.
He's the gift that keeps on giving. All right, before we go, let's talk about geography. On his campaign to support governors who want to ban Syrian refugees, Ben Carson's campaign released a U.S. map to show solidarity, but there was one problem. The map was wrong. His camp has since corrected the mistake, but John, what do you make of the gaffe? Who's running Carson's campaign? There's the map.
Yeah, I mean, it's great for a chuckle. I don't want to make too much of what was clearly a staff level mistake. I don't think Ben Carson himself poured over this, but I think there are real questions about Carson's campaign, how seriously he's taking this as potentially being our next president. You know, not necessarily knowing that much about foreign policy or showing even that much interest in studying up, as versus getting his name out there, you know, having a good time with it and maybe going on the speaking circuit afterwards. So I think he's one of those who we may see fade over the next couple of months as well.
Jack, just a little hiccup. Is this one more nail in his coffin?
Yeah, I kind of agree. I think if Carson has a lot of support. If he's serious about it, he needs to retool the campaign with some real professionals, and then he's got to build a national organization. If nowhere else in the early states, he's not doing that.
That's it from this organization. Jack Burkman, Republican strategist. John Neffinger, Democratic strategist. The best political panel on TV. Thanks to you both.
Thanks, Morris. Thank you, John. Morris.